Good morning from Trinity Episcopal Church in Boonville. We hope you'll enjoy our spiritual offering of music and the sermon of Mother Linda Logan for the 21st Sunday after Pentecost.
Oh, bless the Lord, my soul, His grace to thee proclaim, and all that is within me join to bless His holy name. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, bless the Lord, my soul, His mercies bear in mind. Forget not all His benefits, the Lord to thee is kind. He will not always chide, He will with patience wait. His wrath is ever slow to rise, and ready to abate, and ready to abate, and ready to, and ready to, and ready to, and ready to abate. He pardons all thy sins, prolongs the feeble breath. He healeth thy infirmities, and ransoms thee from death. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
He clothes thee with His love, upholds thee with His truth,
Oh yeah.
and like the eagle He renews the vigor of thy youth.
Then bless His holy name, whose grace has made thee whole, whose loving kindness crowns thy days. Oh, bless the Lord, my soul. Bless the Lord, my soul. Bless the Lord, oh, bless the Lord, oh, bless the Lord, oh, bless the Lord, my soul. Bless the Lord,
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 bless the
bless the
Lord,
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 Lord,
bless the Lord,
bless the Lord, the Lord, bless the Lord. Oh, bless the Lord. Yeah.
In the name of the one holy God, Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer. Amen. Job is waiting for God to appear. And he is in torment. His children have all been killed. All of his livestock and property have been destroyed. And he himself is covered with painful sores. For a week he sat in silence with 3 friends who came to console him. Then, having had no relief from his anguish, Job cursed the day he was born. And at that, the first of the friends began to speak. It was Eliphaz, reminding Job that he, Job, had instructed many persons who were stumbling. But now, Eliphaz says, it has come to you, and you are impatient. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Think now, who that was innocent ever perished? But Eliphaz adds, in a thought that veers off in another direction, can mortals be righteous before God? Can human beings be pure before their Maker? This is the first of the speeches given by the friends, and though the argument moves in different directions, it is a defense of divine justice. Suffering, this speech concludes, is simply discipline which will lead to Job's healing and eventual prosperity. This is the orthodox explanation of suffering. But the problem is, it doesn't apply in Job's case, for Job is a righteous man. And at hearing this counsel of Eliphaz, Job wishes for death. He also condemns his friends and demands that they make him understand how he has gone wrong. Then Job turns his words toward God, calling upon God's compassion. Remember that my life is a breath. If I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of humanity? Why have you made me your target? Why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? But God doesn't respond to this speech. Instead, the second of the friends, Bildad, starts to speak. Does God pervert justice? He says to Job. Or were your children simply delivered into the power of their transgression? If you will seek God and make supplication to the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely then he will rouse himself for you and restore you to your rightful place. For God will not reject a blameless person. Job responds to this speech, first asking how a mortal can be just in the eyes of God, then declaring, though I am innocent, I cannot answer him. For he crushes me with a tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. And, once again bringing up how fleeting life is, Job cries, I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend against me. Does it seem good to you to despise the works of your hands? Why did you bring me forth from the womb? At this, the third friend, Zophar, takes Job to task. You say, my conduct is pure, and I am clean in God's sight. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips to you, and that he would tell you the secrets of wisdom. For wisdom is many-sided. Know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. But Job, knowing that he is guilty of nothing, rejects this counsel also, and declares his desire to argue his case with God. Job actually states this desire a number of times as the speeches of Job and his counselors continue. And Job does get to lay his case before God. But let's step away from this poetic narrative. It is beautiful in its phrasing, and it is deeply moving in its expression of human agony. But it is confused in the development of its arguments. So let's look at the background of the book of Job, at what lies behind the writing of the book. For although the question of human suffering is bound to no particular culture or time, this treatment comes within a book of the Hebrew Bible. Scholars don't know exactly where or when Job was written. It draws on a variety of traditions and genres that were known throughout the ancient Near East. Most scholars think that the bulk of the book was composed between the 7th and 4th centuries BCE. Job is a piece of wisdom literature, which characteristically doesn't appeal to particular beliefs about salvation, but to the lessons of experience, which can help a person learn to cope with life. But this book developed over a long period of time, and in the background of its development is the Jewish experience of exile from both the northern and the southern kingdoms. How long the exiles lasted varies with the different accounts of them in the Hebrew Scriptures, from 40 years for the kingdom of Judah to up to 490 years for the kingdom of Israel. But what the exiles meant was exile from the land, the kingdom, and the temple, all of what the people had been promised by entering into covenant with God. And if the exile was only 40 years in some circumstances, that was still an experience that spanned the lifetime of countless persons. For countless persons, the promises of God were as if they had been erased. And this was a people whose religion, unlike others in the ancient world, was centered in the worship of God as the giver of blessing, the maker of promises, and the deliverer from oppression. How could the people continue to believe that God was good in the face of their deportation from the land of promise and their deliverance into the land of oppression? This is one of the two questions that lie behind the writing of the book of Job. Whatever the duration of the exile, the experience of the people was that of the silence and inactivity of God. Job is their spokesman. What are people to make of the religious tradition of Israel, of the understanding of God as compassionate and just in the experience of God's absence? This is the human question raised by the text, but also examined in the story is the divine question of why humans worship God. Is it only for what they can get out of God? God does answer Job out of the storm that whirls around him. After 37 chapters of silence, God speaks. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. These lines of God jump out at us from the page, and what strikes us is their sarcasm. But these are rhetorical questions, asked not for the purpose of eliciting an answer, but for the purpose of creating an effect. And the effect of the questions God flings at Job might not be that of the put down of Job and humanity that it is frequently thought to be. What the questions might cloak, according to Gerald Jansen, a member of the Society of Biblical Literature, is a genuine invitation to an alternative, positive understanding of God, the world, and the suffering self. What Job has been bemoaning is not just the absence of justice in God's treatment of him, but the loss of a sense of God's nurture and care for him. And this points to Israel's position. Israel has known God as the giver of life and nurture. It has also known God as the giver of compassion and justice. But now, in the experience of the exile, Israel is being asked if they can make the leap between seeing what they can get from God to seeing what they can create with God. What might the covenant between God and humanity transition into? What might the creation of humankind in God's image come to be seen to mean? In the book of Job, no answer is given to the question of innocent suffering. But Job realizes that God is with him, and that is enough to make him reassess his position. What can we take from this? Can we enter into a way of relating to God that is not based on what we hope to get from God, but on what we might create with God? Can we walk in a new understanding of covenant?
We plow the fields and scatter the good seed on the land.
Our it is fed and watered by God's almighty hand.
He sends the snow in winter, the woods swell for grain.
listening to a spiritual offering from Trinity Episcopal Church, located on Schuyler Street in Boonville. We're glad to be part of your day, and we invite you to join us in person for our weekly service at 9 o'clock Sunday mornings.